May he have dominion from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. May all kings fall down before him, all nations serve him. Welcome back to the Dominion Podcast, episode 50. We made it to 50.
50, that sounds like a significant
Was
milestone.
That a bicentenary? No, that'd be 200. Yeah.
It is actually I called Jeremy a week ago or something because my phone just connected to the car when I was driving and it played episode 2. And I made reference to the fact that we were sitting at the table together. And I remember that when we first started, it was like, hey man, I want to do a podcast. Can you help me with it? And he's like, sure. He just came over to my house.
Got some mics, couple coffees.
Got some mics, yeah. Just sat in the basement.
People didn't have to see our ugly mugs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And now they do have to.
That was the good old days.
I mean, this is an action-packed podcast too. I mean, especially tonight, we've got one more white guy than normal.
Yep.
Normally it's two white guys bloviating.
Yep.
Just sitting down, which is thrilling to watch.
The microaggressions are going to be off the charts tonight.
I know when
There's
sitting
so
at
much
home,
oppression just concentrated on these two couches.
The privilege is so thick,
yes.
You could cut it with a knife.
Yeah.
We got Ben Inglis back with us tonight. Of course, he got kicked out of the big chair, but that's because
he filled it well.
He did. That was a good episode. I got a lot of good feedback.
If there's one thing that people
episode.
say about me, it's that I can fill a chair.
What was that PG Woodhouse quote I sent you that one day?
I don't remember.
She looked like he's talking about how this woman was large, and it looked like the chair maker built the chair around her in a season when they were wearing chairs tight about the waist or something like that.
Oh, that's good.
Things not to say to a lady.
Yeah, no, don't do that. Yeah, we got a lot of good feedback on that episode, you and I. I heard from like two
Surprising.
people.
No angry reprisals?
Well, if they did, I didn't see any.
Mm-hmm.
Although there were eggs on my house a couple mornings. I don't know where that came from.
Huh. Do you hand out treats on Halloween?
No, I hand out Bibles. Not a bad idea, but maybe tracts of some sort with candy in them, right?
Mm.
We're all on the board of the KCCS, which is our unofficial sponsor, so we should probably give a shout out.
Yeah, Kawartha Classical Christian School. We are dropping our fundraising video this week.
Did it not drop already?
And we sent it out to our subscribers in an email.
We're in the process of dropping.
And it's going on social tomorrow. So
it's a slow drop.
It's more of a stumble.
If you don't follow us on Facebook, you should follow us there. We have a group, Kawartha Classical Christian School, and we post a lot of updates from the school year, the classroom, what's going on behind the scenes. But yeah, we're doing a fundraising campaign this spring, and the Lord's been good to us. There's a lot of things to celebrate in this school, and it's only possible with the partnership and support of a much larger community. So if you are able to give towards that, make an investment in a fruitful education, then we would appreciate that. And thank you to everyone who does. I know a lot of our listeners do support us prayerfully and financially as well. So,
and we don't want people to just thank you, Tristan. There's Tristan
talk about
himself,
action.
The man from the Upper 40 studio handed me a coffee.
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
Yeah.
I'm in his house, and he brings me a coffee.
It says something about him or something about you, or both.
Or both, yeah.
I wouldn't have believed it if I wasn't sitting here.
So what I was going to say was, for people watching the video, I mean, it's inspiring, and the end with the kids singing the doxology is just,
And that's Tristan and his family, by the way. So if you want to know the man behind the
that's right
behind the studio looks like, that's him.
But we want people to not just consider partnering financially, but if you've got kids, obviously you need to be thinking about other options at this point other than the government school. So whether it's homeschool or whether you want to talk to us about what it would look like to send your kids to KCCS, not necessarily as expensive as you might think.
Yeah.
Probably not expensive enough, but
cheaper than daycare.
Cheaper than daycare.
A lot
That's
cheaper.
True. It's very cheap compared to daycare.
Yeah.
So, and what else? What else? We want to give a shout out to Tristan, of course, from the Upper 40 studio. Thanks again for having us here.
Yeah. JKB Productions did our
JKB
video.
Productions. Oh, by the way, I was talking to Ryan Harris from Ezra Institute this week about he's part of JKB Productions, I believe.
That was a huge name drop that just happened.
Ryan Harris. Big time. Yeah, I mean, Ryan and I were texting back and forth. It's funny. Whenever I get people's phone numbers, I don't carry on conversations with them. I just send them funny memes every now and then. That's kind of my MO, you know. But he was saying that they're also doing a fundraiser for their documentary that you did some shooting for. So they got a video up.
That was your starring role?
Yeah, it was, I'll probably be cut.
We can edit that whole section.
It depends. If they get any real guys, then they'll cut you. But, you know, like if they can get James Coates, like you're out.
They get no funding and they just have to go with me.
Boy, this coffee's really hot. I got nowhere to put it.
Oh, just slide it. There you go.
There we go. Stick it beside your scotch. Hope none falls in. Yeah. Well, what are we talking about tonight? I mean, there's been a lot of internet explosions over the last week or so.
Yeah. Well, not just the internet, like culturally.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, some things on the internet you can't judge. I'm not on Twitter, and sometimes I wish I was to keep up with things. But one of the reasons I'm glad I'm not is that it's so hard. It's so easy to let yourself be led by every recent Twitter controversy that if you actually got off your phone, your computer, and walked around, it's like, this isn't actually a big thing for the people around me.
Yeah.
It's made to feel that way. But the issue of abortion has come back into the cultural conversation in a significant way.
Big time, yeah.
And that is owing largely to the fact that our southern neighbors there was a leak a week or two ago that the Supreme Court justices are considering overturning Roe versus Wade. And this has led to, you know, we don't need to talk about the legalities of that, but what it has led to is a further entrenchment of the pro-murder kids people into their position.
Yes.
And this has, you know, come to I had conversations with even extended family members and formally professing Christians, I don't know, coming out as being pro killing your kids. And I just found it really shocking. All of this at a time where I did the funeral for an infant last week. And someone who the doctors didn't give much chance to live, and he lived 12 days. And Isaac Nathaniel Spurgeon Mills. And many times during his life in the womb, the doctors advised his parents to terminate him because of the low probability of his life. And even our members in our own church lost a daughter a year ago. And the anniversary, we're having kind of an anniversary thing next week. And again, someone with severe physical challenges, and you know, doctors presented the option to terminate, and so it's there's this juxtaposition of hearing these crazy people advocating for killing kids, and we'll get into the reasons. The reasons are actually even more insane than they used to be, and here we are. Like,
there's a good reason for that. So I mean, the more you confront an evil with the truth, the more they have to double down, and so they've been doubling down for a generation and a half, 2 generations now. And as science has progressed to the point where we can watch a 3D image of a baby in a womb, you're like, we all know that that's a baby. Yeah, like there's nobody even denies that anymore. Yeah. So they've had to double down on their position. But what's been pretty revealing has been the response from many of the evangelical leaders, which that's been the biggest reveal. Because for as long as I can remember, the mantra has been, we all want to end this. We just may have different tactics. But now that it's possible that Roe v. Wade will be ending, all of a sudden it's like, it's just the wrong way to do it. You know, why did it have to be, you know, the MAGA hat wearing guys that ended up bringing in the justices that are going to do this, and it's like I would have been fine with
affecting our witness.
Yeah, it's affecting our witness, but we're not really pro-life because we don't go for all these other issues that I'm tacking onto the pro-life issue, and there's just all this obfuscating going on, and it's just really like we should be dancing for this in the streets.
Can you imagine if someone stood up, in 1915 in the southern states and said, we should stop lynching black people. And someone responded with, you don't really care about black people because you're not willing to offer them a job. You don't care about
what's going to happen after.
What's going to happen after this. And you're not really pro-black people. Everyone, like if someone said that today, it'd be like, oh, you're a flaming racist. Yeah. Like it's like, what even kind of argument is that? Like, it just reveals that you're pretending you care about their life by saying, oh, I care about all these details and nuances, but you're attacking someone who wants for them to not be hung.
Yeah.
So it's like,
if you even go back further, the arguments are actually mirror exactly the same, the arguments that slaveholders made. We're just too entrenched in this economically. It's too woven in with our societal fabric. Yeah. If we free them, where are they going to go? What are they going to do? Like, they're not going to have a place to live. They're going to be poor. We provide for them. Like all this other stuff. Yeah. It's the exact same arguments.
It's the height of oppression.
So I don't know if we want to even get into the arguments yet, or if we wanted to start a little further back. But
why don't I actually thought I could read the statement that Ben prepared for our church.
Okay, sure.
And Ben prepared a statement on behalf of our church, which is a formal statement for Hill City Baptist. And I would encourage other people to adopt this. I think it's really good. It got some exposure in the States, and Owen Strand sent it out. And I think Christians need to double down. Go ahead.
This is the issue. And we're faithful Christians are involved in a rebuilding project now.
Yeah.
We've assumed so much for so long.
Yeah.
That we're in danger of. We actually just have to. It's almost like we need to come up again with a catechism to address the modern issues, things that have been assumed, and now we're saying ridiculous things like we need to confront the abortion issue whimsically.
Yeah,
and I'm starting to hate the word whimsical more and more every time I hear it.
You mean winsomely?
Oh yeah, not whimsical. Winsomely.
Winsomely.
Yeah, as if it's the euphemism sneaking in.
Yeah.
From Christians who ought to know better, and I think whether they're being intentionally blind or deceitful, or they've been just caught up in the deceit unknowingly. It's a huge crisis that we need to address. We can't keep assuming that all Christians fall on the biblical side of these issues.
Yeah, because clearly we don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that what led to you writing this? I mean, obviously we care about this issue.
Yeah, I think, and someone said recently, I think in terms of COVID, that a crisis is a crisis presents an opportunity.
Right.
And it was said in a terrible context where kind of the World Economic Forum, whatever. But I think that's the case now, where abortion has arisen again to public consciousness. Mm-hmm. It was kind of shuffled to the back. I think there was a survey a few years ago. It was basically like 90% of Canadians, now these surveys are ridiculous, but don't see abortion as even an issue anymore. Right. It's kind of just, it's there. Where this is, in light of what's happening in the States and the possible overturning of Roe versus Wade, then as Canadians, we need to revisit it for us as well. And I don't know how possible that is from just how far gone we are as Canadian politics. But I think there's a moment here that we need to seize. And I think that was the incentive.
So part of what you're getting at too, Ben, is the idea that we are so prone to be shaped by the values and the principles around us in ways that are even unconscious. So I want to close by, a call to action and strategies moving forward to stop the killing of innocent children. But one of the first things we need to do is not to surrender the terms of the discussion.
That's right.
And the way that the culture, it's almost like you're not allowed to say anything about this. No uterus, no opinion. You are inherently immoral if you do. Like, they've taken this high ground, and the only way you're allowed to have a conversation is if you're winsome, whatever that means, or you're compassionate, i.e. you affirm my reasons for killing my kid as being legitimate, even if we disagree. And it's like, we need to reject that outright. The way that our culture talks about children and killing them is the same way that anti-Semites talked about killing Jews and racists talk about killing black people, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's nothing short of murderous bigotry. That's what it is. And there may be complexities regarding to the consequences of these decisions, but like, let's get our heads on that. We're not letting them tell us how we're allowed to talk about this, because they don't think it's a problem.
We need to get back to simple, straightforward language.
It's murder.
Like, language is a huge part of this. It's
don't let a racist tell you how you can talk about racism.
Yeah.
Like, you don't let people who kill their kids tell you how the terms by which you can have a conversation about it. No.
Truth is a potent, beautiful force that the more we try to dress up, the more its potency is affected. Words like murder, words like life, that have somehow taken on pejorative sense, right? Like, you just need to be clear about the language, because you can't get to what's next. You can't get to action. You can't get to anything unless you're clear on definition. You can't have a clear definition unless you're clear on the words you use.
And I can almost bet with absolute certainty that the same supposed Christians who are now talking to us, lecturing people about how they ought to talk about this, are people who live in moral ambiguity. Mm-hmm. They're people who told us during lockdowns that how we can talk about it, what conversation was off limits, what we're not allowed to debate. They're people who the only time they land on something morally is the place where you're not allowed to land on something morally. That they will come out strongly against people whose tone they don't like or whose certainty they don't like, but they don't actually come out with the tone and certainty about other issues. And it's just a sign, that's just a sign of a hypocrite. And the Canadian church is just full of hypocrites. It's gross. Yeah. So Ben wrote this statement. I'm going to read it. And I thought we could dive into it because it brings up a lot of important issues.
You could even, it depends. You can even skip the preamble if you just want to get to the actual statement.
I was just going to read the principles.
The
the other part wasn't very good.
Right, yeah.
Nobody needs a preamble. Get to the meat.
We affirm the following: that human beings are not merely the product of a long, undirected process, but are intentional, unique, and even preeminent beings among the creation of God. Moreover, we affirm the scriptures that each person is a finely wrought instance of divine handiwork with inherent dignity, realities which do not change based on the respective stage of development. Maybe we could talk about this as we go. It used to, do you remember like in grade elementary, maybe high school as first came up, the debate used to be, is it a child? Like I even remember seeing a video of, I think Trinity Bible Chapel put it out, of some street evangelism or something they're doing and talking to students in Waterloo or something. And the guys were just like, well, it's not a kid. And like, I remember this used to be the rhetoric. Well, if it's not a human,
it's not a human.
Then, it's not murder. But the scary thing is, in the last week, I've had multiple conversations and people commenting. Everyone grants that it's a child.
Yeah.
Like no one's even trying to say it's not a child.
The problem is you get underneath that, and abortion is the end of a worldview that is nihilistic, and you even have a lot of the kind of the transgressive fiction and media coming out that treats and speaks about life as nothing, as worthy, actually deserving of violence and
Darwin,
degradation.
Right?
It's Darwin. Yeah. It's if there is no higher purpose to us than a happy accident at the end of a mindless process, then we have nothing. We have to start there. There's no basis for protecting life.
No.
And all the rhetoric that says, worldview stuff, that's not important. It's like, well, then your passion for life is entirely arbitrary. What are you basing that? Are you basing it on kind of pragmatism?
Yeah.
It's kind of humans are needed to perpetuate our species.
Yeah,
that's kind of what you're left with.
This is the end of Darwinian evolutionary worldview, the materialist worldview. In that worldview, there is zero objective basis for human dignity. No. There is not. In fact, there is the promotion of the survival of the fittest.
That's right. And the destruction of the weak.
This is at best a natural inevitability. But it's actually viewed, therefore, as a moral good.
Here's the tension, though. Most people, when they think of it like that, they shudder a little bit. But that's exactly what we're doing now.
Oh, 100%.
And so we've taken, we've walked out this principle. We say, okay, we believe life is meaningless and that were happy accidents, like you say. So people are going to be consistent with their worldview eventually.
Yeah.
Even though the man or the woman on the street may recoil at that, they may go home and think about it and be like, but I don't really have a way to combat that idea. We are just meaningless, so what does it matter?
Yeah.
But we still have consciences.
Yeah.
And so there's this fight between the conscience and the worldview that they're holding.
And the only way they can get out of the consequences of a worldview is to exist in a world that is, at least in the West, haunted by biblical assumptions.
Yeah. You talk about justice, you talk about rights, but you mean something else.
That's right.
Entirely.
And the more
Compassion.
that we play out these worldviews to their logical conclusions, the more people aren't going to like what they find.
No.
We've been able to kind of perpetuate in this delusion that we can allow all these things and nothing will happen, right?
Yeah.
We'll still be able to, but no, ideas have consequences, and we're seeing them now.
Well, yeah, and it even used to be like, well, abortion should be rare, and only in the instance where the mother's life and death. It's like, hey man, anyone gets pregnant now, you go into the doctor and the baby's healthy, they'll ask you, do you want to continue? Like, i.e., we will kill your kid if you just don't want to. Like, there's no reason for it. The mother's life is in no danger, even by their standards of standard of living, which is the most bigoted thing to do, right? It's like you're basically saying everyone who's not an upper middle class person doesn't deserve to live. So, like, all those people around the world, it's like you're a giant racist because you basically think their kids they don't deserve to live because they don't have a privileged existence like you.
Yeah.
But this is the end of a world that has no basis for human dignity. And they're I'm going to read the second point here about personhood. All it becomes is the powerful over the weak. That's all it is. Which is why the pro-choice people, the pro-murder people, their methods are coercive. They're through the legislative process. They're through.
They don't have
principles.
There's no principles. The only way
it's
you
just
can
the exercise of power.
It's just exercise of power. And this is not going to end. Like, there's countries in the world who don't have kids with Down syndrome. Like, they don't live there because they're all dead.
Iceland.
Yes.
Yeah, they were just boasting a couple of years ago about how they solved autism.
Yeah.
Like, no, you didn't. You just murdered all of them.
Yeah.
Killed everyone.
You've got blood on your hands. Yeah.
It's like we solved the Jew problem.
And it's there's stories coming out now about the assisted suicide.
Yeah.
And it's just like family members are complaining because I was in the hospital when people were telling me that I needed to be intubated and I didn't need to be intubated. And I know many more people we've personally spoken with who were told false information, who other doctors in that same hospital the next shift said was wrong. You now have those doctors have the authority to take your life. But what they'll do is they'll tell patients like, there's nothing we can do. And they'll say things that are actually just lies to actually kill them. Like that happens in Canada right now. So anyways, the second affirmation, human life begins at conception. We reject as arbitrary and biologically false the notion that personhood is something that accrues throughout a fetus's development. And this is important. If it's not a conception, where is the point?
Yeah.
And any point you make, the personhood
arbitrary.
is totally arbitrary.
I heard somebody argue this week. I mean, you hear this one all the time, right? Once the fetus, they don't use the term baby or child, but fetus is just Latin for child anyway. So once the child is self-sufficient, and it's like what? So like 5 years old, Like, can a 3-year-old take care of themselves? Can they be self-sufficient?
Yeah.
No, but they actually believe that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that creepy interview with the guy in California where they were interviewing people about when should the line be. And this guy was like, I don't know, like maybe 10 weeks after they're born, give the woman a chance to decide whether she wants to.
Okay, but here's the problem with that. Like, let's actually like literally think about that. The maybe 10 weeks. So just so we're clear, what you're saying is at 9 weeks, and 23 hours and 59 seconds, it's okay. And a second later, it's murder. So you're actually saying that in that, and not even second, what am I talking about? Here I am being so imprecise. We're talking like hundredths of a millisecond, like whatever the smallest measurement of time there is conceivable in the moral universe, that split second is when it went from being totally permissible and a human right to murder. So it's like, are you actually prepared to say that you know where that moment is?
And what if you say 10 weeks and your coworker says 11 weeks?
Yeah,
and someone else says 8 weeks.
Because they are going to. The line never gets pushed in one direction.
This is it. It's like when you don't have transcendent norms, you are left to the tyranny of opinion.
Yeah.
And you have nothing to fall back on. And that's a horrifying precipice to look over.
And how depraved are we that we're so comfortable forming those kinds of ethical conclusions on mere speculation?
Yeah.
It's like the guy's like, I don't know, maybe 10 weeks. It's like, okay, let's set the 10 weeks aside. I just asked you when it's okay to kill someone.
Yeah.
And you just flippantly threw out an answer. It's like, what if you're wrong about that?
Yeah.
But it's like, we don't care. We don't care because like...
And we've buried the atrocity under, and I get to that later on, under so much jargon and terms that we permit ourselves not having to confront the atrocity of it.
Yeah,
it's just we're just preemptively concluding a collection of cells.
Yeah,
right. This is this. We're having the total upheaval of language when it comes to these things. You can't have a clear discussion.
No.
Even if, like, with basic terms.
You can't, and I think we got to go back to what you said, Al. You cannot surrender that ground.
No.
When people are using categories that are not biblical, like we're just terminating this clump of cells, you cannot use that.
No.
You have to just go above them and call it what it is.
Yeah. To surrender that ground, like you're just the same person who, when some racist is beating his slave and saying that it's just like my dog and you don't object, you're that person.
Yeah.
It says, rather, we affirm the moment of fertilization, a human being emerges as a genetically distinct human organism, needing only the proper environment to grow and develop. We believe the difference between an adult human and a preborn child is not one of nature, but of form. And so if you say that well, I'll go further. He says the distinction between so-called descriptive view of conception, which affirms that life begins at conception, and a normative view, which questions whether the fetus is deserving of legal consideration, is artificial. So what some people try to do is say, well, it's a human, but not all humans have the same rights.
That's right.
And it's like, okay, but on what basis
you need to push them on that?
Yeah, it's like, do any humans have any rights?
Yeah.
And on what basis
who gets to decide?
Because that person's 3 feet and that person's 5 feet?
Yeah.
Do they have less legal consideration?
Yeah.
That's what that argument is.
Oh, 100%. And that's why, I mean, someone came up to me after church, a brother in the Lord, and he said, you know, I'm going to start, when people start talking to me about abortion, like at work, I'm going to just throw it there. It's like, yeah, I think we should actually raise the abortion age to 3 and like just see what people do. Because likely they'll be like, whoa, that was pretty extreme.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, likely, but it'll lead to good conversation. But in today's world, you never actually know, because you might say that and people might go, yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Well, why not?
Yeah, why not? You know, it's hard. It's hard for a woman, you know. It's like, that's how evil we are.
And this is the slippery slope that everyone calls a fallacy, but that once you get rid of transcendent norms, is not a fallacy anymore. You look at the assisted suicide discussion, where at the beginning everyone was like, oh, it's only for very specific terminal issues. They're in so much pain. Within a year, the discussion was like, I'm just depressed. Or I just, I'm below the poverty line.
And all we had to do was look at Europe to see that that's where it was headed, because they were already there.
They already do that.
And we said, hey, this is a slippery slope. And I mean, there's a way that can be a fallacy, but we're just pointing at human nature and history and be like, every time people do this, it ends up here. We're going to end up there. I mean, it's just...
Yeah, slippery slope argument, you can't conclude from it that this will happen.
No.
But the point you're making is that because of the lack of principles or the problem with the principles, it could. Like,
the burden of proof is on you to tell me why it's not going to end there.
Why do your principles prevent this?
Yeah.
And when we bring up a slippery slope, we're saying in our estimation, they don't prevent it. Mm-hmm. And that needs to be taken into account. So we would say, look, when you're a human, according to Scripture, which is when you are conceived, you have the rights of a human being.
You're a person.
You're a person.
Yep.
You're not more of a person.
Yep. There's no becoming a person.
No. And it's like you don't reach this peak personhood and peak rights when you're 25 and in good health and liked, and then it declines.
And then we become old and sick and people have to take care of you. Well, then you're worth less.
Yeah. Personhood is tied to nothing less than your value as someone who's created in the image of God. And that is a value that is not given to you by anyone other than your creator. And it cannot be taken away by anyone other than your creator. And the Christian contention is that not only we're right about this, it's the only rational basis for inherent dignity. Yeah. The only one.
And you want to understand the polarization that's taking place in our culture. It's not just a matter of like people have stronger views on left and right, conservatives and liberals. It's like there used to be right at the bottom a shared assumption that life is sacred. It's like, can we at least agree on that? Okay, then we can move forward, right? When that's not common ground anymore and life is not assumed to be sacred, well, you get the mess we're in today.
Yeah. But that shared assumption only came out from a Christianized culture.
Yeah.
You don't get that in non-Christian culture.
Oh, of course not.
Yeah.
But
just basic things that are so undeniable.
Yeah.
And once you lose undeniable things, you're left with just insanity and chaos is what we're seeing.
So we go on and say we utterly deny the existence of so-called reproductive rights. This is a euphemism, but used to put positively the murder of children.
Yeah, like calling it healthcare.
Yeah, this is what oppressors do. They euphemize their language in positive terms so that they are doing something righteous.
Right.
This is what Nazis do.
Yeah.
This is what dictators do. This is what genocide perpetrators do, and this is what pro-baby killers do.
Right. They're not persons. Yeah, they're humans, but they're not persons. They're subhuman. They're not as developed. I mean, so much of this, we already said, comes from Darwin. And we gave up this fight when we abandoned the biblical view of creation, literal 6-day creation. When we surrender that ground, like, we set the wheels in motion for this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, because if you don't have a literal creation, you lose the principles of creation.
If you don't have Genesis 1,
did God really say?
Yeah.
We're back to that.
Yeah. No,
if you can doubt
point.
God in one aspect, it extends to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is our conviction that the rights of one party are not permitted to usurp the rights of another. And this is a fundamental principle of biblical justice. I mean, I read in Genesis 9:5-6, and for your lifeblood I will require a reckoning. From every beast I will require it, and from his fellow man I will require a reckoning for the life of man. Whoever sheds the blood of man, by man shall his blood be shed, for God made man in his own image. And this is the shocking, startling, unique ethic of the God of the Bible, namely that every human life is of equal value.
Yes.
This is not a human principle. There is no historic basis for saying that this is anything other unique to the God of the Bible. That is such a sham. It's such an ignorant thing to say. And what we're seeing is the fruit of abandoning this God, is we are reverting away from equal rights for all people to a place of prioritizing certain people as having rights. Abortion is the antithesis to human rights. It's the antithesis to it, because it's actually prioritizing the rights of the weak of the strong over the weak, and excluding the weak altogether.
I know everyone hates when you bring up Nazis in these discussions, but again, the burden of proof is on you to tell me how we're not going to be at the Aryan paragraph in another 5 years.
Yeah.
Where you have arbitrarily selected a certain group, a certain demographic that is worthy of perpetuation, and we have the moral obligation to destroy those who are not of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's where this goes.
And you said something earlier about how they're not arguing from principle, but it's an argument from power.
Yep.
If they had a principle, we might be able to say, okay, there's their principle. We can probably hang our hat on. They're going to end up here. But there is no principle. And so it's just going to keep going and going.
Yep. Well, the closest thing they have to principle is choice.
Yeah, choice.
But this is even a hypocrisy. And this is what we need to call them on. They say, my body, my choice.
It's just a lie.
You don't actually believe that all people have a choice. What you believe is you should have a choice. Yeah. You believe that certain people should have a choice. So a lot of people support abortion because they're like, well, yeah, someone should have the choice. Like, human autonomy and freedom to choose is an important thing. And to a degree, we would say human responsibility and the freedom that corresponds with it.
Yeah, I believe I should have a choice to not get a vaccine or not wear a mask.
Yes, yes. There are choices that are necessary to uphold human rights and responsibilities. But those choices are not absolute. And the reason why, on a rational basis, we can say this, is because your choice and my choice all impact one another's choices. Yeah. So if I say, yes, all three of us get to do whatever we want and we will uphold each other's choice, what if we disagree? Well, then one of us will have to concede. Yeah. Right? And if we're honest, I mean, in this instance, my choice would win. But
I don't know. I've been brushing up on my alpha skills.
Have you seen my Taekwondo skills? What kind of skills do you have, Jer?
Krav Maga. It's an Israeli.
Just YouTube.
What's that one where you fling your arms around? Wing Chun?
Wing Chun.
Yeah, I always thought that one would be cool.
But
Wang Chung.
But it's not really
a song.
I think that was a dance.
No, it was like Bruce Lee.
Oh.
Yeah, but
Come on.
Everybody Wing Chun tonight.
I feel like that's an arguable point that you would necessarily, if it was me and Jer against you.
With the combined manliness on this couch, I think we might be able to overpower you.
Yeah, I don't know, boys. But the point is that there's no such thing as absolute autonomy.
You don't make choices in a void.
No, you don't make choices in a void. Yeah. And there's a limit on all of our choices in order to uphold the choice of others.
The only way you can choose to kill your baby is that the baby can't say anything in defense.
Yeah.
So you have the illusion that you can make a choice in a vacuum.
Did you see Oprah flapping her gums about this and saying it should be a choice between me and my doctor and my child?
No.
It's like...
Is Oprah still a thing? I haven't seen her in
Sorry.
What does the doctor have to do with it?
Oprah.
What
It was
about the
Whoopi
husband?
Goldberg.
Oh, yeah.
What about
Whoopi,
the husband?
No, but it was also like...
Or the man?
Did you have a conversation with your child?
Yeah.
You know what I
have a
mean?
conversation. He says he's okay with it.
He says he's okay with this.
He doesn't want to be rich and poor or whatever. You know.
Yeah. But it's the ultimate lie. It's like you don't believe in choice. So that would be their principle, circling back. But we need to challenge that and say, you don't believe that.
Yeah.
You don't actually believe in human rights. You don't believe in choice.
And we need to challenge the idea of autonomy. We've talked about this with the like the vaccine stuff. People that we maybe made the right call, but have the wrong reason for it. Like, I'm a self-autonomous person. You can't tell me to do that with my body. It's like, well, hold on a second. You're not autonomous.
Yeah.
Your body belongs to God.
Yeah.
Right. And so again, we have to have the right biblical framework here.
Yeah, Scripture says you were purchased with
I'm not
choice.
autonomous. I can't do whatever I want with my body just because I chose to.
Yeah.
And again, we don't surrender the ground about it being their body. It's not your body, and you know it's not.
No.
So you're wrong on two counts.
Yeah.
You're not, and you cannot be autonomous.
Yeah.
It's just not possible.
No.
And delayed consequences doesn't mean there's no consequences. Like you were saying, there's two. There's obedience and there's defiance of the Lord, who holds dominion from sea to sea. So the fact that your baby can't respond and look in your eye as you're murdering it doesn't mean that God won't, and He will, hold you account. When He judges the living and the dead.
Yeah.
And that's what people need to be reminded of as well, is that there is a judgment forthcoming, though you may be able to escape consequences now.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to read this. This is a post. This was going all over Facebook. And it was like, I'm not pro murdering kids. I'm pro Becky, who found out through a 20-week anatomy scan that the infant she had been so excited to bring into the world had developed without life-sustaining organs. It's like, let's just talk about this. The argument is Becky found out her child doesn't have what they need to live, and so we should kill that child. Okay? There's so many problems with this. One, like even our friends, they were told that their son wouldn't survive birth. I was standing inside of the hospital anticipating that it would be stillborn or soon after Isaac would pass away, and he lived 12 days. He lived 12 days, and they said that there's no chance of this happening. He's going to be born, and he came out screaming, a good, powerful scream, and his vitals were great. Other than his severe heart issue, he was great. And they had 12 precious days with him. And they absolutely, I mean, they never would have even considered anything else. But they were so thankful for that time that they got with their son. So you can't even make that decision based on the limited resources that like no one could definitively say whether your child will live or die, which is why we don't have the authority to do that, right? Yeah,
and there's something sinister going on in that as well. As with so many of these things, it's like these talking points that don't hold up under scrutiny. But when you're saying there is that all those who are pro-life, they're kind of mercenary about it. It's like they don't see the face behind the abortion, right?
Yeah.
It's like they don't care about people.
Yeah.
They just care about their agenda. That's what they're trying to do there.
Yeah, it's like I'm saying I don't think Becky should kill her kid.
Yeah.
It doesn't follow that I don't care for the sorrow that Becky faces.
Yeah, there's a primary issue here.
And this is what we need to not surrender the ground in. It's like, hey, listen, pro-killing baby people. You don't have the right to compassion. And this is why the holistic life people are so annoying, because they buy into the same fallacy. It's like if you are stuck on the issue of don't kill kids, you can't also care about the struggles and the burdens that women will carry. It's like, why?
Yeah.
It doesn't logically follow.
Because it's convenient for your narrative.
And it's not even true. Like people who care about not killing kids adopt kids.
A lot.
They adopt a lot of kids, which means they take every burden that you can mention, they take those on gladly and joyfully. It is empirically false that there are just these cold-hearted people who on one hand are willing to stick their neck out and say, don't kill your kids, who simultaneously don't give a rip for anything else in their life. And we need to just say at that point, hey, pause. You don't love Becky. We love Becky. All right. The other thing is, like, how does it follow that your child is unlikely to live, that you can now kill them?
Yeah. Yeah. Where's
it's like,
that?
think about that principle.
Well, we've already adopted it for adults and old people. So
yeah, it's like,
why wouldn't we just apply it to the kids?
It's so sinister, and it's under the guise of compassion, but it's like, you're not pro anybody.
Yeah, you're pro self. You're a narcissist.
Yeah, you're a total narcissist.
And we've adopted this impulse to everything in our culture right now. This isn't working. It's got a slight flaw.
Yeah.
Throw it out. I want to buy something new. And I don't want to kind of make it trite by making it about appliances and things. But we do that. It's everywhere. There's no sense in which I need to sacrifice. I need to make a sacrifice for the sake of something. In this case, a life. Right? It's like, if it's not perfect, that needs to be thrown away.
Yeah.
And that is antithetical to the gospel.
Yeah, and they use the example of a woman who was raped on her way home and now carries a child of her rapist, which would be a horrific thing to have happen to you, and a lifelong struggle, to put it lightly. But it doesn't follow, as Ben articulated, that you can two wrongs don't make a right. You know, when you add murder to rape, it doesn't make things better.
Yeah, and I don't know where you guys are at with the idea of capital punishment, but in my view, the rapist should get capital punished.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, our view is that there is a death deserved in that situation.
It's not the innocent
party.
party.
Yeah, it's not the baby that deserves to die.
Yeah.
It's the perpetrator.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm pro Kathy, who had her innocence. You know, someone who was an underage. She was 11-year-old. She isn't mature enough to bear the consequences of the betrayal. And again, heinous instances. But it's like, you don't help that person either. You don't help that 11-year-old.
You want to put a murder on their conscience now
exactly.
too?
And you know why I know they're lying about this when they bring these examples up? Because if they really were going to be consistent, they would be against abortion in the cases where it's just being used as a birth control method. But they're not.
And they'd be against the trans stuff.
Because I'm for Amy being able to do it, or Becky, I'm going to let everybody do it.
Yeah.
Well, no, then you don't have the principles you say you have.
Yeah. This is what's crazy. This one is like, I'm pro Melissa, who's working 2 jobs just to make ends meet and has to choose between bringing another child into poverty or feeding the children she already has because her spouse walked out on her. It's like,
this is the insanity where you have
say
where you have no triage of principles because you have no paradigm. It's literally just convenience. But it is just right on par with taking of life.
You're looking at your balance sheet going, well, I wouldn't be able to afford another baby, therefore.
Yeah. It's like, and on that principle, you could literally do that to a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, there's nothing
There's nothing.
Say.
Or a bum on the street.
It's like perfectly consistent.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like, why don't we go around and get rid of all the homeless people?
I have actually had somebody make that argument to me. I confronted a friend who has had abortions. And they use that argument. I wouldn't be able to bring the kid up properly. And I'm like, well, So you think you should be able to just kill homeless people because they have, they're taking up space and they don't have money and they can't take care of themselves. And
And for the minority, and it is a minority of kind of forced pregnancies. By and large, the majority of women who are insisting on abortion, it's as if the pregnancy was outside of their control. It's just like there's a parasite that has affected them, unbeknownst to them, and totally outside of their responsibility. Yeah. And again, we're back to this baby has to bear the consequences of my bad decision.
So this post ends by saying, you can argue that I'm pro-choice all you want. The truth is I'm pro-life, their lives, women's lives.
Yeah.
You don't get to pick and choose which scenarios should be accepted.
Well, that's what they're doing.
It's like, that's literally what you're doing. Yeah. What we're saying is, hey, how about we stop picking and choosing what lives matter? Yeah. They all matter. All right. You can't kill people. You can't kill innocent people. Let's go back to that.
Yeah.
And then we can help all these people. Mm-hmm. But what you're doing is picking and choosing who lives and dies. You are choosing that. And that's just disgusting. And Christians need to, the reason this goes around is like some kind of sick, twisted person looks at that and either thinks that's compassion, or some immature Christian feels like, wow, I guess I don't want to be seen as not compassionate. I need to affirm this.
Was that from a professing believer?
I don't know who it was from. It was all over the place.
Yeah. Sounds like something you might get from.
Yeah. But here we're back again to the whole like pietism.
Yeah.
Like I want to get into the fray of these matters. They're polarizing. People's lives are at stake. This is the consequences of like when you stay up in your spiritual cloud and say general spiritual things, unspecific things. Like people die.
Yeah,
kids are killed.
Yeah,
it was the thing with the lockdowns and the vaccines. It's like there's consequences.
Yeah, we need the end of the be nice gospel. Yeah. It's a false gospel.
Yeah, the 11th commandment.
And we need the return of the biblical gospel, the bloody death of Christ for bloodthirsty sinners.
Yeah.
That's just what it is.
Yeah. So let me ask this question, and I've got my thoughts on this, but do you guys think that guilt is driving a lot of this insanity?
Oh, 100%.
Like, I mean, a lot of people have clearly had abortions or been involved, especially with the men, like, you know, coercing or just being absent and
yeah, when the whole shout your abortion thing, it's kind of like if I say it loud enough that my shame and guilt will disappear.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that definitely explains the rabidity and frankly demonic energy behind, like,
it really feels that way.
That you can so clearly embrace antithetical statements and believe contradictory things. Like that's set on fire by hell.
And it shows the human desire for righteousness, and that they need to, it's self-righteous, right? It's like, I can't say I'm killing my kid. I have to say I'm pro-choice. I have to say I'm reproductive rights. I have to euphemize things so I'm seen as actually doing a moral good, and attack anything that exposes the dark and sinister reality that this is a heinous evil.
And again, repentance is the way forward.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you bury it, and you bury it, and you bury it, and you think you hide Adam and Eve, you hide from God. And you think that is your salvation. Salvation is coming into the light. And you think it's going to be the death of you, but you expose your sin to the light, and that's when the promise comes to you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean this is the hope for the abortion debate. It's not winning arguments. We need to be clear on the truth, and we need to do a lot better job of it. And the Canadian niceness is essentially, you're the same person who just sat quietly while people owned slaves. That's who you are. Pietists are the same people who had slaves and permitted it. Same people. And we need to let that die. And we need, especially men, we need men who will grow a pair and who will step up and speak the truth in love, and will have moral clarity. And if your life is shrouded in things that you are ashamed of and guilty of, you need to repent of them so that you can speak clearly to issues that matter. And you need to not be afraid of angry women. Right? You need to actually just say, like, look, I'm going to advocate for the oppressed. I'm going to speak for the oppressed. I'm going to speak for the voiceless. I'm going to speak for the vulnerable. I'm going to use my strength to defend the weak. That's our duty. And the pro-life movement in Canada, sadly, is still led largely by women. And I think this is the reason, this is why the church is here in Canada, because, people really commended Ben's statement, and I thought it's very well written. Ben, you're an amazing writer, but it's kind of like, what else have people been saying?
This is just basics. That's what I thought.
Like, this is just basic.
It's like basic stuff.
But it's like, you're right. When you think about it, it'll be like, we affirm life from conception to birth. It's like say something to say we said something without really getting into it, that they can, really.
What can we say that's going to be true but not offensive?
Yes. True but not offensive. But the true truth is offensive.
I think in this case it needs to be offensive. I mean, you don't have to make it offensive on purpose, but you should not hide the offense of it.
No. Like, racists are offended when you tell them that the people they feel superior to are human beings. And like people who kill their kids are going to be offended when you say that that's murder.
And you don't gain any ground. We're reading a book in our 7-8 class right now. We had this discussion about bullies and kind of the human and the Canadian specifically impulse to avoiding conflict is that, well, just let them have that. Just kind of situate yourself as to not cause a ruckus, right? Like, give them that ground. It's like endless concessions, right? And that's how you ennoble. That's how you increase the bullies' power and tyranny.
Yeah,
until they're killing left and right, right? Mm-hmm. There's like a human intuitive sinful blindness that thinks that's a wise way forward. Mm-hmm. It was the same with the lockdowns, right? We'll just give them this, we'll give them this, we'll give them this, and then all of a sudden your church is shut down. It's like it's the same with abortion, right?
Yeah,
you got to stand. What are the first principles? And you stand on those.
Yeah. So don't surrender the ground. Don't let them shape the conversation. You don't have the conversation on their terms. Right? Why would you let your enemy pick the battleground?
Yeah.
You want to pick the battleground. You want to pick a place that's advantageous. Why do you, before you even begin the fight, so to speak, you surrender all the advantages? Yeah. Like, look, this isn't an issue of compassion. No, we're not the ones overlooking the concern for people. Yes, it's like all of these things. This is where we begin, right?
Yeah.
And all of it, every time being clear that murderous sinners can be forgiven by a God who sent his son into the world and who was murdered by sinners. Mm-hmm. And that's the beauty of the gospel, that even people who kill their own children and advocate for that can be forgiven of their sins. And that is the depth of the mercy of God. And that is the only solution. Like, the end of this guilt-ridden avoidance and these exercise of power and oppression is just death.
Yeah.
It's just death. And it's death for the people who participate in it. It's death for the victims of it. It's just death for everybody. But Jesus Christ came into the world that we might have life and have it abundantly. And we need to hold out the hope to people in this dark and twisted world of what that life truly is. Mm. And that's our call. So this is not a secondary issue. This is 100% a gospel issue. It's a false gospel being pushed on our culture, and we need to teach the true gospel of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
I feel like getting into the nuts and bolts of moving forward would be a whole other episode.
Well, I think what we should do is we should see if Laura would come on.
Yeah.
Or if we could chat with her, someone who's involved in the movement, practically.
I think maybe we do another one to tidy up some of these loose ends.
Yeah.
With the three of us, and then talk real practical with Laura Klassen. Mm-hmm. Haven't officially invited her on yet, so hey, if you're watching,
it's the soft opening.
We'll be calling.
It's a soft invite.
We'll be calling.
Any recommendations? I'm just thinking, like, most of us are probably going to be on the same page with sort of the whole issue and a lot of the nuts and bolts of it. But there's a great documentary. I think it's available on YouTube. It's not available on any of the platforms. It's called Black Genocide, Maafa 21, like Maafa 21. I believe that's the title. It is an in-depth look at Planned Parenthood, how it began in the States, and how it was birthed out of the eugenics movement, and how the explicit goal of the eugenics movement was birth control for poor people and black people and Mexicans and everybody else they didn't want, undesirables.
Yeah.
And then when that wasn't working, they pushed it further and started advocating for, the abortion for those people primarily. And to this day, still most Planned Parenthood locations are in poor neighborhoods. And, they couch it in the language that, we're helping poor people.
Yeah.
So, no, you're killing them because you don't want them. This is actually like full blown racism.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it's a really heart-wrenching documentary to watch, but it might put a little lead in your belly.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have any other.
Joe's got a good book. I think it might be called For Life.
Yes.
A little one. Just a good thing to get 10 copies. Keep one for yourself. Give them to people.
We've got some at the chapel on our little book wall there.
Nice.
Feel free to take those.
Yeah.
There was a large. I was just trying to look it up. I remember when I took ethics at seminary, there was a large white book. It was just called Ethics, and I remember.
What was it about?
I remember
something called ethics.
It was a smaller course, and I was staying at this little hotel, and I remember reading the chapter in there on abortion and the actual process, the abortive process. And it had never been explained to me in that kind of detail. And I just remember weeping. I mean, it was shocking. It's all dressed up in terms and everything, but they literally rip the child apart with forceps, depending on the stage.
Or suck it out.
They used to just burn it with a saline solution. Like, it's terrible. But I would say, as hard as it is, confront yourself with the grotesque reality of abortion, so that you could get rid of all the euphemisms and the jargon.
One of the things they did after the war was they marched Germans out to the concentration camps. And there's several reasons for this. But one is so that there's a visceral reaction, which limits the possibility of that happening again. Because if all it is like, I saw them get on trains, I mean, it was kind of like suspect, but I didn't think too much more. It's like, well, no, where were those trains going? Why did they come back empty? Yeah. And when you go and look at the burial grounds and you look at the furnaces and you look at the gas chambers and you see all of the shoes stacked up, and the jewelry and the gold teeth, and it's like, oh, this is what we did. Like, you need to look evil in the face to see your need for grace. And people who ignore grace, they have to ignore the evil. People who want to justify themselves, they have to prop themselves up and dress themselves up and put on a show and pretend that there's something that they're not.
Wilberforce did this too when he was trying to abolish slavery. They bring people down to the piers to look at the slave ships, go on and look at them.
There's actually an amazing movie, Amazing Grace.
Yeah. They make a movie out of that?
It's good.
Metaxas' book?
No, it's
actually... Is it about John Newton or is it about Wilberforce?
No, it's about Wilberforce.
It is about Wilberforce. He meets John Newton.
There's a Newton scene in it.
Yes.
Yeah. Was that made from Eric Metaxas' book?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so it's pre that. Okay.
But it's inspiring. And I think for people, we are in a similar situation whereby the dominant culture is so supportive of killing kids. And it's an uphill battle. And Wilberforce was a long fight. It was a long fight.
It was his life's work.
It was his life's work, and I think we need to sober up and realize that this is something we need to commit to for the long run.
Yeah. And it brings us back to I know we're going on here, but our last discussion, Jer, on Christians getting involved where they can, and even if it's a small area of a political, just get in there. Be a force of prayer, be a force of opposition, and it's going to be incremental, but there's nobody, and we need to start somewhere, right?
Yeah,
we need to take that long game that Wilberforce and those guys they committed to. It's going to be their life work. We need to take the long game, and we need to take the short game, because I do think we have a window here.
Yeah, I do.
So
then, and we're not Wilberforce. We've got people like Laura Klassen and the End Abortion Now guys in the States and their whole network of churches that have already done a lot of this work, and we just need to tap into it and like pick up the torch and go. So I mean, I know everybody's optimistic about the Roe v. Wade thing, and we don't want to get too much into the legality of it, but even when that's overturned or if it's overturned, it doesn't mean what we all think it means. It's not over, right?
No, it's just sending it back to the states. It's a constitutional issue. It's not really about abortion.
Yeah. R.C. Sproul Jr. put it this way. He said it's D-Day.
Yeah.
Right? You're landing on the beach, but you still have to fight and get to Berlin.
Yeah.
You know? So it's really just the beginning for a lot of, for the states. But we need to take a principle for that for us too.
I'm preaching this weekend from Acts 18 when Paul is actually in the midst of Corinth, which was basically the San Francisco of the ancient Mediterranean world, just utter depravity and paganism. And God appears to him in a vision and he says, don't be afraid, keep on speaking. And that's kind of the main thrust of my text. And I think that's a good thing for all Christians. It's like we have the words of eternal life.
Yeah.
We have the truth. And our mandate needs to be, I think, do not afraid, keep on speaking.
Yeah.
In the opportunities. I remember I was just thinking, Al, when I was writing it, when you were asked to speak at the lockdown protest. And how I was a little wary because of kind of the various groups that were attached to it. But it's like, look, this is an avenue to speak truth. And people definitely resonated with that. And we need to be alert, being aware of opportunities and making opportunities to proclaim truth.
Absolutely.
Keep speaking it.
Not be passive.
Yeah.
And we all just need to be prepared to be called bad names.
Yeah.
And be willing to take
Hate
that,
it.
right?
I mean, I call you bad names already.
Well, yeah.
When you're not
and it
around.
hurts when it comes from you because you're a good guy.
Right.
But I mean, if you're being called bad names by people who murder their kids, then, you know, I'm willing to take that.
It doesn't hurt as much.
It doesn't hurt quite as much, but it's still just something we have to get used to. It's going to happen.
People think that it's like people have watched movies about racial oppression in the States or something, and they think that it's like the football coach hero, and in the end, everyone celebrates him. Like, read your Bible.
You got the enemies like slow clapping.
Yeah, it's just like
no.
when you stand,
they're going to hate you till
real
they die.
life.
The reason, stand for the oppressed. Why are they oppressed? Because there's oppressors.
Yeah.
Oppressors do not like when you advocate for the oppressed.
Yeah.
And they don't go away when you win.
No, they don't go away. Like, what happened to the prophets who spoke? What happened to Jesus? Like, did it soften the hearts of the Pharisees? No, it didn't. All it actually did was make them resent him.
Maybe if he'd been more winsome,
Yeah.
it would have softened their
It's
hearts.
like way.
He came and helped and healed people who had sat in the most miserable conditions for their entire life. And they look on it, all they see is a challenge to their power and their righteousness. They don't care about those people. So it's like, get over it now, Christian, that if you are going to be truly fight for justice, that you will be given a platform and that you will be given, money and that people will like you. And it's like the only people that they do that for are their own.
Yeah.
And so if we are going to actually stand for justice in a world that is corrupt, we're going to be hated.
Right. And this is why we have guys like David French and Russell Moore.
Yeah.
You know, it's like they want both sides.
Yeah.
They want to be liked, but they want to do the right thing.
I love how that's
I don't,
all blowing up in their face.
I don't
right
think
now,
they do want to do the
quite
right
frankly.
thing, but they put on airs that they want to do the right thing. But they're just trying to, I don't know. They love the world, right? They're in love with the world. They're in love with the praise of men.
But the fruit
The praise
comes.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah.
There's been an apocalypse, a revealing. Well,
It's really warm in here.
it is really warm in here. We should stop recording so we can open a window.
Yeah.
Turn the air conditioner back on. But just real quick before we go, what are you guys reading? Got any good books on the go?
I'm reading That Hideous Strength for about the 18th time. C.S. Lewis's Last of the Space Trilogy.
Yeah, love it.
It is I can't express how much of a masterpiece it is.
Yeah.
And how prophetic it is. And the insights Lewis brings to the machine of materialism and humanism.
Even the insights
scientism.
Even the insights he brings in that to male-female relationships are wild, eh?
It is just, and it's a delightful read.
Yeah.
Everything about it, the way he weaves in mythology. I don't know how Lewis worked out some of this stuff in his mind, kind of.
Like with Merlin?
With Merlin and but the way it's such a fantastic read.
Brought deep heaven down on their heads.
So I'm reading that again.
Yeah.
And The Dumbest Generation, I'm also reading by, and I'm going to forget his name. It's all about what a generation raised on smartphones and screens and ideology has become.
I guess we're looking at
that.
That
sounds good.
Yeah, it's quite discouraging. Anyways, yeah.
I'm reading a book. It was given by a young man named Roshan. He went to TBS, sent a book back through Teggett to give to us elders. It's an edited book, and it's a Festschrift. Is that what you say? Like written for Sinclair Ferguson, and it's all on pastoral ministry, and really good chapters. But
why don't I have that book yet?
Well, it's because I'm reading it first.
I thought it. Oh, okay. It's just one.
It's just one.
Oh, okay.
And there's a quote from Voss in there, and it says, "The joy of working in the dawn of the world to come quickens the pulse of all New Testament servants of Christ." And that inspired me to write something this week, just about the narrative that we see ourselves living in. Do we see ourselves living in the sunset or the sunrise? And a lot of people's eschatology is that we're living in the sunset, and that's just not true. It's a sunset of the world and the flesh and the devil, but it's the sunrise of the sun. And it just encouraged me with the hope that Christ coming into the world and living and dying and rising and ascending and presently ruling and reigning changed things. Mm-hmm. And there is a hope, and I felt a quickening in my pulse when I read that. So that's kind of what I've been plugging through. Joe Boots' book is always, I've hit it here and there, Ruler of Kings.
Yeah.
Strongly recommend that. It's great. It's succinct. And
it's only 190 pages long.
Yeah. I want to get a bunch of
bonus.
I've got 3 copies if anyone
Yeah, I thought you were going to bring one for me, Jerry.
Oh, if I had known that you wanted one, I would have brought it.
I think we talked about this last
time. Did we?
time.
Okay.
It's all right. Next time.
Forgiveness, please.
What are you reading, Jerry?
I'm still almost done the Silmarillion, and it's getting real good. It's getting good because now it's getting to the stuff that ties in with...
You are the first person I've ever known to read the Silmarillion right through.
Huh.
Well, I mean, it's been stop and go for a while. But
it's not a compelling narrative necessarily.
No, because it's so many small narratives put together.
Yes.
But as the further along I get, the more it makes sense, and the more I'm enjoying it, and the more I want to double back and start over again. So I'm almost done that.
What a special kind of... I've definitely never heard someone say, you know what, I'd like to actually return
read
to
it
this.
again.
Read it again.
Well, because I know I'll pick up a lot more.
Yeah.
But there's another book.
Surprise us.
I'm going to go off script. I'm going to talk about a book that I'm going to read. How about that?
Okay.
Don't be brazen.
Do you guys read any sci-fi? Do you know who Philip K. Dick is?
No.
Sci-fi author. I've never read any of his books, but he's got one on. It's a pro-life book. It's called The Pre-Persons. I don't know if it's a short story or not, but I heard somebody describe it. It's about young kids that are aware that they are still not persons yet and are still possibly going to be sent to an abortuary, like 4 or 5 years old kids, kind of playing and wondering if their parents are going to change their mind and all this. It sounds like a haunting book, and I think it's not that new. It's been around for a while, and so the topic came up, and I was like, that sounds kind of eerily like what's going on now. So I'm going to be reading that. That'll be one of my next reads. Yeah.
Should the Lord tarry?
Should the Lord tarry? Lord willing, the creek don't rise,
The that one of your folk sayings, Jer?
I don't know. I heard somebody say it one time and I liked it. Well, I don't know what I'm going to leave you with today, but maybe as the outro's going, we'll just say thanks for joining us. And you going to come back next week, Ben? We can keep going on this
That
topic?
depends on my schedule.
All right. Well, we'll see. Hopefully we'll see you next week. I'll leave you with this. The 6th commandment, thou shalt not kill.